Yeah. You get a lot of interventions in homeschooling.
You do. You sure fucking do.
Because everything's a crisis. Maybe that's a good
Yeah,
thing to
that's a
jump
good
into.
in. Yeah.
Everything's a crisis. Even the reason you homeschool is a crisis. Most often, I feel like it's like a lot of times it's a sort of a either a criticism of public school, but usually like an in crisis criticism, or it's a crisis of they're just not competent. I'm able to do this better. So I need to be in control of my kids' schooling because I can cater to them more specifically. I can, this or the other. Or it's the public schools are teaching kids to be gay. So you can't allow that because the kid will get confused.
This is a great way of starting this too, because this is why there's been kind of a homeschooling revival of the last few years. That's really weird to watch as an adult former homeschooled kid.
Yeah. I went onto YouTube and Googled, I sound like a boomer. Oh no.
Well, YouTube's owned by Google. It works.
It works. So you're allowed, it's the same search engine. So I Googled on YouTube, why should you homeschool? And then immediately, why shouldn't you homeschool? And I have two main takeaways. Well, maybe 2.5. The half is that, shockingly, there's a lot of men on YouTube with big old podcast episodes about why homeschooling's amazing. And I just know for a damn fact that none of them are doing any of the schooling.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So
no.
My dad didn't do any of it. I never heard of another kid's dad doing the homeschooling. It was always mom. So it's funny, the really, really huge pro, we're going to sit down and talk philosophy about why homeschooling's good. It's these dudes. But then that's when you type in, why should you? When you type in, why shouldn't you? You still get all this pro homeschooling stuff.
There's a ton right now.
Actually, it's more women. And they're warning you about the dangers ahead to help you get through it and giving you advice.
Oh, okay. Here's what you're getting yourself into. It's not going to be easy. That kind of
exactly.
It's a tongue in cheek. Why shouldn't you?
Yes.
Kind of the same way as I would say, why shouldn't somebody major in philosophy? Because I did that. And now this is my warning for look, you're going to struggle to find a job when you graduate. You need to be ready for that.
Be ready. That's exactly it. And some of them were real clickbaity titles. Some of them are what to know about homeschooling.
Sure.
That's pretty innocent. But then some of them are 10 reasons you shouldn't homeschool. And then you open it up and you're listening to it. And it's reason number 1, you're going to be around your kids 24/7. It's oh, okay. But then the lady's explaining it and she's just now there's great bonding opportunities and you'll be closer than ever before and blah, blah, blah. It's okay, you're really not this isn't why it's bad. You're just explaining all the bad things that happen during homeschooling to you and then explaining why they're really not that bad immediately after. Or how you could fix it. Right?
Yeah. No, you mentioned YouTube. I looked up homeschooling on YouTube a while back because I was thinking about long term. I think I'm going to return to this subject, really research the movement and talk about it, maybe with a video essay or something. So I was poking around on YouTube though for the same as you, and I was shocked at how much there was. And the reason this came to my mind, a few months back, I actually asked you if you wanted to come on and talk about it a few months back, actually. And then it just happened to line up with focusing on evangelicalism this month to actually pull the trigger on it. Was I'd run into some fucking Twitter post where somebody was talking about why you should homeschool and all that. And I kind of realized that from the vantage point that you and I both kind of have, this recent explosion of it is really weird feeling because it's, I'm trying to think how to, it's to me a failed revolution because everyone I know and I grew up around, they ended up losing the faith or they did not become the kinds of people that the pitch of why you should homeschool is supposed to make, is you're going to make these warriors for Christ. I know a few people who lived that, and continue to do that. But a grand majority of the people I grew up around, they never fully lived up to it and eventually gave up, you know?
Yeah.
And so like with that kind of cynicism, the kind of like, you know, it feels like for us, we're at the end of like the failed conservative revolution. We see that it did not create the idealistic environment that was being sold to people. And then now watching in light of the groomer panic, the CRT panic, all these things, that's kind of triggered this, you know, revival of homeschooling. It's just really funny to watch these like right-wing accounts on Twitter who were never homeschooled, have never been around people homeschooling, talking about how they're going to homeschool their kids and they're going to have 15 kids and shit. And it's like, bro, this is not going to work out the way you think it's going to work out.
It's crazy. And you're right. It is like really funny. It's genuinely funny. And it's also like, it's like watching a kid walk up to a hot stove with his finger out. It's like the same kind of, it's like you're watching it and I'm looking at this 19-year-old dude on YouTube talking about like, well, here's how like me and my girl, we're going to homeschool our kids because first reason is I can spend so much time with them and I love spending time with my kids. And the second reason is the woke mob has gone crazy. Well, anyways, guys, like and subscribe. And if you think too that you should do independent learning like what I offer on my channel, then hit the like button. So I'm like watching this happen. I'm like, this is so crazy because it's both a blatant grift and also like, I'm pretty sure this guy is serious. I think he's actually, if he has a kid or if he's gonna have a kid, like, he probably will make his wife homeschool them.
Make his wife. That's always important because that's how it always manifests.
Yep.
You know, well, and I mean, I think a lot of them would say that they know that because, you know, the thought process is, well, you know, I'm the patriarch, so I'm going to go and win, you know, do the breadwinning. And then, you know, my wife is going to take this on. But then that also makes
a long day of grifting online, honey. What did the kids learn today?
I think that makes it kind of like, even funnier when you see like young guys talking about the excitement of homeschooling too, because what they're really saying is, I'm going to force my wife to do this.
Yeah.
They're not saying I'm going to take on this, this challenging thing.
Right. It makes me think of Lord Farquaad from Shrek. Some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice I am willing to make. It's like literally that. And it gives this really dark, sinister undertone to what like most people probably watch and they either don't think anything of it at all, or they're like, oh, wow, maybe I should. Yeah, you know, you're right. The woke mob is bad. Like, or like, oh yeah, I would like to spend more time with my kids. I don't agree about the woke mob, but some of that stuff is kind of weird. Like Common Core and all that. I don't like that. Like,
sure.
There's plenty. Take your pick. There's a grab bag of reasons to hate public schools.
Yeah, completely justified reasons. Like, well, Kelly and I have joked about what, like, potentially homeschooling children we would have in the future, and it would be for the exact opposite reasons I was, which is like, you know, I'm watching the schools, you know, get taken over by right-wing conservative nut jobs, and I'm like,
oh my god, they're taking over the schools. What am I saying? No, but it's true.
But like genuine, like I'm watching the CRT panic, the wokeness panic. I'm watching fucking like, you know, people talking about like gym coaches doing genital inspections to make sure that teenage kids are, you know, like are of the right
gym coaches
gender.
Weren't already over inspecting kids' genitals.
Yeah, this is. Yeah, let's give them a legal justification to inspect children's genitals. Right. I'm sure that's going to go well.
I wonder if they're all like thinking of this idea like, well, they're fondling the kids anyway. We may as well have them make sure they're all the right gender.
You know, I don't know many people who would say that explicitly, but yeah, I don't know. Right. I think you might be right that isn't not the thought process. You know what I mean? Like,
not the thought process. Exactly.
But yeah, like, oh, good.
Well, it's spooky is basically it. It's spooky because I lived through this kind of upbringing that was very, very flawed in some designed ways. Like there were design flaws in this strategy. I'm not even really gotten to the point of blaming individual faults or failures. It's just there's like a really bad way of doing things that's built into this idea. And I'm watching other people now grift with it. Like, that's creepy. But it's also not exceptional. Like, that's exactly how we ended up homeschooled. Like
was a kick in the 90s. 90s, as people often forget, was a time of the culture war. Like it's talked about all the time. They were talking about culture war issues all the time in the 90s, and the 80s and 90s is what birthed the movement that you and I in the 2000s were homeschooled through. Yeah, we were kind of at the tail end of that movement. So that's why I really feel like you and I feel the full failed revolution thing, because my class at the network, the homeschool co-op I attended, I don't know, we had usually 50 people or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but as of now, the couple years after me, once so I graduated in 2015. In the few years after me, this class size has gone down to 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 families.
No way!
It's straight up just it was a moment. And wow. When I was a senior, the freshmen that were coming in, that was kind of the last big wave, is what I've figured from kind of what I've seen on social media.
It's really bizarre. I have memories of going to that place and just there's dozens of kids here, and they're all homeschooled, and it being a little bit of a I don't know, kind of a little bit of reassurance. You're 12-year-old Leo walking around, and you're like, oh yeah, there's 30 homeschoolers in this room. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not alone.
Yeah, but now they are. They're alone.
Now they are. So yeah, it's a historical thing, and I think that this is a problem with evangelicalism and homeschooling. Both of the movements have, and they're linked, have this they don't like to think of themselves as within history. So evangelicalism will associate itself with just Christianity historically, rather than a specific politico-religious coalition that sprung up in the 50s. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, they would never admit that. They would say, no, these doctrines were written by Moses himself.
Mm-hmm. And so the homeschool movement doesn't want to think about the fact that it's a specific historical movement that came up as a reaction to school integration.
Right. And that's where all these guys like Dobson and who's the Shiny Happy People?
Bill, not Bill. What's his name?
Bill, Steve.
Gothard. Bill Gothard. Yeah. That's the quiverful guy.
Yeah. That's where Gothard and Dobson then seize that moment to make themselves famous with books and doctrines. I mean, to make themselves famous. I think it more happened to them than they maybe intended it, but this, like you said, it's a reaction, and that's what Goddard and Dobson were doing. They were reacting.
Yeah, and specifically to, again, when you plug it into history, it suddenly makes a ton of sense. You have 60s as the civil rights movement, the women's movement springs up in the late 60s, early 70s. It's a reaction to...
Every time to be a white guy.
Yeah, rough time, man.
In the 50s?
Oh, in the 50s it was, great time
so
to be a white guy.
Because...
And so, there was the sense that, that it had been overthrown, the family had been overthrown, the white family had been overthrown, and criminality was running. There's no sense of authority anymore. And you know what? It's the damn liberal psychology, liberal child psychology that got us here, which is, makes no fucking sense. But,
Especially when Dobson himself is a child psychologist.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was his thing, though. It's because he was reacting against, I'm blanking on his name, but the liberal, psychologist of the day. But, that actually fits in nicely because, homeschooling, old homeschooling, we're talking early 20th century when that was getting talked about, was it was a left wing, or at least liberal-ish movement. Because, and if you think about it, it makes sense. If you think about, if you're an anti-statist, more libertarian or anarchist left, you're well, the state is indoctrinating us to just become good workers. Yeah. And so it's no, we're going to liberate children by letting them grow, by interacting with nature, by, stuff so that's the unschooling movement and, stuff like that. But that collided with the fundamentalist movement of Dobson. I said I wasn't going to do talk about the movement history, and yet here I'm doing it already.
You have to a little bit.
You have to a little bit.
You have to a little bit.
Yeah. And so, it collided with, Dobson and fundamentalism and stuff of the 80s. And then here we are, right?
Here we are. And what that all boils down to are these very specific personal experiences that you and I share.
Go.
And then not so much like replicas of that experience, because I think even between you and me, we have like
there's differences.
There's some pretty stark differences in what it was like being a homeschooled evangelical, beyond just you went to network and I didn't.
This was a preview for a Patreon only episode. So check out the show notes if you want to hear more.